Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of Tuhon and Son. This is an episode where Dad and I ventured into the great wilds of Ottawa, where Dad was putting on a seminar, and we're like, you know what? Let's make this a special one. It's Father's Day. Let's do one live. So we did a little tiny show at the end of it in front of an audience about, 9, 10 people. And you'll hear them chuckling silently in the background, especially to themselves. And
Why? They were laughing at some of our jokes.
Oh, yeah, they were laughing. I don't know if it was the good kind of laughing, but they were laughing. That's our Father's Day special, the first live show, and it happens right now. All right, welcome to an episode of Tuhon and Son. Hey, everybody. We're doing this for the first time live in front of people.
And on the road.
Yeah, and on the road. We're moving up. We're moving out.
We're in Ottawa. We're at the N1 Muay Thai Academy here in Ottawa, in Preston.
This place was really nice. I walked in and immediately, was impressed by their bathroom.
All right.
Yeah, it was a lot of coffee. A lot of coffee on the road. And then I proceeded to have more coffee, and my heart's been beating about 160 beats every 0.2 seconds. You're the physical one now. What is an irregular heartbeat? What does that acquire?
One that probably makes you feel weird.
Okay. So anyway, Dad, it was a nice seminar today. We had a lot of good people here.
Oh, thanks. It was a lot of fun. We did two things. We did the morning, we did dog brother material, and the afternoon we stayed in a Cali situation for Pekiti-Tirsia.
All right. So what's it like? The duality. You did a double seminar. Do you usually do that when people come? They're like, I want the combo. I want the fries and the burger.
No, as a matter of fact, normally I'll either teach a separate class or I'll do two classes. But this is the first time I've actually done a seminar where we've covered two bits of material.
Oh, you're out of here? Hey, want to say hi to your dad?
Hi, Dad.
No. Come in the microphone.
Hi, Dad. He's been dead like 30 years, but
Well, happy Father's Dead.
How nice and cryptic. I was just going to say we could give your email to the Ghostbusters or something and be like, whoa. Yeah. So it's Father's Day. Working on Father's Day, you bum. All right, you were saying about the seminars. You do.
Yeah, well, normally it's just either Cali or Dark Brothers, but we did both today because we wanted to expand what we're doing and who we're doing it with. So
Yeah. Well, it seemed like everyone had a nice time.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
It always worries me because I have that that perpetual feeling that God, they're going to find out I'm a fake again. Oh no! And so as a result, you sit there going, oh. And every time anybody has to go to the bathroom, you figure, oh, he's leaving. Oh gosh, no.
Yeah. We're talking on the way up here, and it's kind of like Dad and I, since starting this podcast, have talked a lot more than we ever did in our entire lives together. And through this, you mentioned to me, and what I am now aware of is a hereditary condition, to be paralyzed with self-doubt. So
I'm not doubting it. I'm sure I'm not very good.
Well, Dad, I think you're good.
Oh, okay.
I think you're great.
Oh, thanks, son.
To the extent where when other people would mention, there's 100 million martial arts in the world, and I'm sure they're all adequate martial arts. They're fantastic. But I grew up not because you told me this, but you were my entrance to the martial arts world, because besides you, the Power Rangers, and some Jackie Chan movies, I just didn't care. But, if you did a martial art, I'm like, oh, my dad does real martial arts. You never said this. So when someone says I do this other thing, I don't know.
It's funny with you and Serena. What's really funny is that I would hear that you'd have various friends and they would all practice martial arts, or they wouldn't all practice, but some of them would practice martial arts. My kids would be going, oh yeah? Well, I don't think that's very good. And I'd hear about it later going, oh, really? You said that to them?
Okay, I had a guy who said, I made up my own martial art called Tiger Claw.
Anyway.
I also claim people who claim that they attacked a guy by drop kicking him. That is, for those unfamiliar, that's in the wrestling terms when you jump in the air, kick them, and land on your back.
Yeah, which is pretty good inside a padded wrestling ring, but not so good on a sidewalk.
No, not at all. Just to say to all the people out here, it's like, here you are training with Dad and stuff like that. Sometimes it blows my mind. And this Sean Patrick Flannery, who is one of the Boondock Saints, he's a big BJJ guy. He really likes Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He actually did a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seminar back last May, because I met him at the Ottawa Comic Con. He mentioned he was doing it the next day. when I told him, I'm like, oh yeah, Philip Gelinas' son from Gamma used to train at our place. He's like, oh man, so do you train and stuff? And I'm like, no, not really. He's like, oh, you telling me you had this free buffet of information and you never ever used it? And I'm like, well, it's like having a pool in your backyard when you never swim, you know? That's the thing. People I know with backyards never use them.
Ryan was a vegetarian at a barbecue.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, I was also a tease. Like, I would be like, Dad, I want to get a uniform. I want to start training. And my dad would be like, awesome. My legacy lives on. Until 2 faded weeks later where I lost interest. And Serena did that to you first, though.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I started teaching kids because Serena wanted to train. And so that was fine. So in about 3 weeks after she started, I think I'd convinced her that the classes were going to be 45 minutes long. And when it turned out to be an hour, she looked at the clock and said, they're not 45 minutes or an hour. I'm not doing this. She sat down and never did it again. So I learned. And then when
you raised a fine generation of quitters.
What can I say?
Enter the self-doubt. Yeah. But no, I was a tease when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu started coming to Gamma. I'm like, oh, and Dad's like, he tried to even use my interest in wrestling. He's like, that's the real wrestling. I'm like, really? Okay, get me a gi. I'm gonna try it. And then I lost interest in that before we even started. I'm sorry for all this tease. We're talking about this because it's Father's Day. Let's talk about all the stuff you're actually proud of me about, like like how to, I know how to set up microphones and.
Right, and you're a mean guy on him stage.
Yeah,
Ryan
mean.
is actually quite phenomenal. I mean, you see him and he seems somewhat self-effacing, but when you get him in with a guitar on and a few people behind him who can play musical instruments,
that can drown out my singing, I'm awesome.
Well,
you turn up those amplifiers and make sure the drums are real loud. I rule. But thanks for the compliment, Dad.
Well, no.
You're the same thing as me. Like when someone starts saying something nice, it's just like, say something sarcastic, quick. Yeah. So, is this your first time here, Dad? Because it's my first time here.
This is actually, I've been here at least 10 times that I remember.
10. Awesome.
Well, every seminar I've done in Ottawa, if it hasn't been here, it's been somewhere really close to here. We did one outside of Ottawa. We did it at John Lianos'. We did one at John Lianos' school in. I'm thinking the wrong place, but it's not Castle. It's Embrun. That's it. I knew it. If I said the wrong one, the right one would come in. John Lianos' Ketchikan School in Embrun, Ontario. We've done one there, but most of them have been done here and at the N1 Academy in Ottawa on Preston, where outside right now there is a Italian cycling race going on.
Yeah. That almost prevented us from coming back here after lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all these people, you recognize some of these faces, right? That are in front of us right now.
That would be good.
Yeah. We're painting a picture. There's 10,000 people eagerly lined up watching this podcast. Did I mention I'm drunk? No.
With power.
Drunk with power. It happens with the microphone. So it's Father's Day. Does anyone watching us talk right now, anyone have any of those moments when they decide to pursue martial arts and stuff like that, and their father had an interesting reaction? Any of you shot brave boys? Okay, Dad, what happened? All right, Dad, what happened when when you told grandpère?
Well, actually, what happened is that I had, unbeknownst to myself, expressed an interest in martial arts. And my father, this was 1965 or 66, my father came home with some black belt magazines, which, of course, I had never heard of before. And so I was so impressed, the fact that they actually had martial arts in a magazine. And so I memorized this thing. It was front to back. And for the next 4 or 5 months, he bought me every month this black belt magazine. And it was amazing because they had articles. I mean, in those days, nowadays, basically, martial arts magazines are advertisements. The guy on the front cover has bought an advertisement inside, which is how he got on the front cover. But in those days, they had really good authors writing real stories about real things. And so they would have stuff on capoeira and silat and all sorts of martial arts that you'd never heard about over here. And it was amazing because, in fact, in those days, what they used to do is when they would hear about people who had basically come back from the Orient, having left as a green belt, and they would arrive back in North America 18 months later as a second or third degree black belt, they would bust them. They would literally out them. And they would, say, watch out for such and such a guy. He's in this town and he's claiming to be this, but we have it on good authority that he left as a green belt only 6 months ago.
Oh man,
and
it's
now
the black belt police.
Well, yeah. And I mean, nowadays you can't do that because you get sued. But in those days, it was considered the thing to do. If you could out a guy, you were doing something really positive for the martial arts. And of course, some of those guys, I remember, they're now really well known, and they may have been phonies then, but I guess they aren't phonies anymore.
Maybe they developed a complex.
Maybe. But
Tell me I'm not a black belt.
But anyway, but in those days it was really amazing because you really learned a whole lot. Martial arts magazines were a really good source of information. And, thanks to my father, I did it. And then ironically, a few months later, I started doing martial arts. I was in a really tiny little town, and we, they had a school, an elementary school that doubled as a YMCA in the gym on the Sundays. And they had one day a martial arts demonstration. And this guy came to town. Actually, it was the husband of the local hairdresser, was the sponsor of this stuff. And he brought the guy who became my first teacher, a guy named Tran Quang Ba, who was a teacher of Chito Ryu Karate. He was the vice president of the National Karate Association under Masaki Tsuruoka. And he was the first guy that taught me, and he had his black belts there, and they all looked awesome. And I started training, and he wasn't actually there for the rest of it. The hairdresser's husband was there, and he has an orange belt. And that fall, it was during the summer, that fall he decided to go in, and so I started going into Montreal to train because he was going in for a couple of times a week. And then about a month later, he quit. So I hitchhiked the rest of the time. It was like in those days it didn't seem so absurd.
Yeah. There's not, I'm trying to think of something I'm passionate for. There's nothing I would hitchhike for. But, you were doing this in pre-Jason Voorhees Freddy Krueger movies. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up with a lot more fear, I suppose. Maybe I know too much.
No, you didn't meet the guys I met.
Okay.
I was afraid.
Okay. Like, Google has made me scared to do half the things, I guess, in what decade is this in?
The OOs?
No,
10s?
when you're hitchhiking.
Oh, that was in the 60s.
Oh, in the 60s, exactly. So, people told each other.
People got killed. They just didn't tell anybody about it.
They didn't report every single murder. Yeah. So, another thing about that's interesting about how now that we do a show together, now you're subject of something I have to, obligated to pay attention to every week. I kind of knew you hurt your legs last year, but I didn't know the full extent. And Mom mentioned to me yesterday about the treadmill.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
No, that's when you try to do multitasking and you're not successful.
Okay.
I was running on a treadmill, and I was trying to change a channel on the screen in front of me, and I was trying to change the music on the iPad, and I was trying to do one other thing, but guess what? When you look at something like that and you change your energy about 3 or 4 different times, you don't really pay attention to the fact that you don't have the traction. So when you're running, it's not like you have to look at your feet, but you have to pay attention to your feet. So I kind of hit the side and I fell. And of course, I didn't have one of those automatic off things attached to my shirt. It was, it's my treadmill. So therefore, who needs one of those? And so I was holding on to it, and the treadmill kept going.
So basically, you're holding on, and it's just
it's not cheese grating. It's kind of wearing away my shin because it was like a sandpaper sheet. And it was funny because my wife, it kind of ground down my shin. Took, I guess, a couple of layers of skin with it, and it was just red. It didn't really bleed badly, but it was just red. And then my wife came in, and she was looking at it and going, "What's all that white stuff on the treadmill?" And the girl who worked for us said, "That's Philip's leg."
At any point did you say, "Jane, stop this crazy thing"?
No, actually, well, I should have let go. Had I not been so bloody-minded to hold on, I would have just hit it and rolled to the end and fallen off. But instead, I was holding myself. I'm still, it's kind of like when people hold on to things, and meanwhile they're getting buffeted around, and that's kind of what happened. I And then what's even dumber about it is a month later, I did exactly the same thing.
All right, whatever. I'm going to tell you something about my dad. I'm going to tell you Father's Day stuff.
Oh God.
So this is getting into the personal life of Phil Gelinas. You don't see this is beyond the stick, beyond the mat, behind the man. I'm going to tell you guys this. Dad is one of those guys that as soon as you want something, don't hold your head like that. I'm going to tell you something nice.
Okay.
Dad's one of those guys who, if he likes something, he works really hard for stuff. And Dad's, I wouldn't say a tinkerer, but he definitely likes gizmos, likes gadgets, likes the idea that if there's this new technology, he gets a kick out of it. The problem is that every time Christmas or his birthday rolls around,
I already have it.
He already has acquired it. So I've been getting that crap for like 30 years.
Yeah, not just yesterday. I was showing him some speakers I had, and he went, "Oh, where'd you get those?" And I said, "You gave them to me for Christmas."
Because at this point, I'm like, here's a blank check, Dad. I've got him so many useless things that he's kept out of niceness, but really just occupy the house. Bruce Lee statues. But anyway, for his birthday, and this is a present not by me, before his birthday, my sister got him an iPad, and I've never seen my dad weep over a present before, but he did. Yeah, every day since then, I've felt a little inadequate that I'm in that I can't bring you to cry for any good reasons. I made you cry for terrible reasons, but no good reasons.
Yeah, well, nobody else I know has fallen off a fence like you have.
Yeah, there you go. Joe, a little brief history. About 11 years ago, I fell off a fence and broke my face in 3 places. And Dad's reaction was, "Why did you do that?" No, he didn't. There was some love.
No, actually, it was funny because I thought that
there was nothing funny about that.
I know. Well, what was funny, peculiar? It's like he was sort of like he had his mouth open, and I thought he'd knocked all his teeth out because there was this huge space between his teeth, and it turned out that wasn't the space, that was where his jaw was broken.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then all the rest of the teeth were actually up in his gums. So he was very lucky. We found a guy that was a really, really good surgeon, and he yanked all those teeth out and repaired everything. And he was very, very lucky because up to that point, it's kind of like if you see Bobby Orr's knees and you realize that's the way they used to repair knees, and nowadays you see somebody doing the microsurgery, and you realize that little scar on the side of the knee is exactly the same thing that Bobby Orr had, only Bobby Orr had his knees cut front, side, backwards, and they spread it open. Sort of like when they show, in CSI, they show them, doing the abdominal cut.
Yeah.
Well, that's so you were very lucky.
It's ironic to say you fell off a fence in 3 places and broke all your teeth. Man, you're lucky.
No, you're lucky you still have your teeth.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, luck is relative.
Always that glass half full. Always that mouth half full right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, another thing about my dad that maybe you guys don't know is that Dad loves CSI, like anything to do with, where did this come from? Because, you didn't have CSI and Law and Order and that have only existed for so long. What did you watch before all those shows came out?
There were others.
Yeah, such as a little history lesson, something to Google when listening to this. What's Quincy?
Exactly.
Okay. You remember it?
It's all exactly. See, no, never.
Never Mike Millen and wife.
No, that was Rock Hudson and some woman that they pretended that was his wife, and then they would solve crimes and stuff. Okay.
What's your favorite Ottawa memory of you coming down here and training? You've been coming here for so long.
Something? In 1966. I came for, I don't remember which one it was, but I came for the Canadian Karate Championships that were held in those days, Lansdowne Park, or in the hall there. And it was funny because I'd seen in Black Belt magazine, same thing, there was an advertisement in the back, and it said, to Lansdowne Park, to Ottawa. So I went, and told my mother, and so my aunt who lived in Ottawa was called, and she agreed to somehow ferry me around. And so I took the train up to Ottawa, of which there used to be more trains than there are now. And I got there, and my aunt picked me up, and she drove me to Lansdowne Park. And I went in there, and I bought a ticket. And I don't know, have anybody ever been to a place as big as Lansdowne Park, or at least the hockey arena part? You realize there's enough room, and at least in those days there was enough room for maybe 10,000 people. And when you buy a ticket up in the nosebleeds, at a karate tournament, they don't really expect you to sit there. But At 14, you sit there. What do you know, right? I was actually 13. So I was, imagine the bowl. If I had a pair of binoculars, I probably could have seen everybody that was on the ground. There was nobody near me, but I was sitting in my seat because I knew that if a black belt came up to me and asked me for my ticket, I didn't want to be in the wrong seat.
The black belt police strike again.
So anyway, it was quite funny, and I was looking and I thought, wow, this is awesome. I'm at a karate tournament. The first time, yeah, and so that's what happened. And
I couldn't help but notice that. But I asked you what was your favorite experience in Ottawa. And
that was my favorite experience. It was the first time.
If you've been to Ottawa that many times, and your best time was like one time I sat in the nosebleeds.
No. It was the best time because of the first time. It was awesome because I had never done. I mean, like I'd heard about it, I'd thought about it, but if you actually get to go to your first experience and there's nothing that there's nothing about it that's new, that isn't new. I mean, like even sitting so far away, you sit back, here we are, almost 70, 80, 90, almost 50 years later, which is pretty damn scary. Anyway, almost 50 years later, I'm talking about this thing that happened that long ago that actually affected me that deeply. So, I went back. I actually participated in the karate tournament in 1973.
Was it in the same place?
Probably.
Because that'd be rad if you're like someone was in this front row and they're like, let me see your ticket.
I showed it to some guy in 1966 and he didn't care. Yeah. Anyway, so it was funny because by that time I was actually not that bad. And so I competed in the tournament and it was my first tournament as a black belt. Actually, Bill Wallace was fighting and he was a pretty amazing fighter. He had legs that just could go anywhere. And he became a big kickboxing champion after this. But this was 1973, and he was fighting at this tournament. So I won a couple of fights, and I got to the, the quarterfinals. No, the final 8. But the problem was, see, I'm one of those guys that does really okay when you fight right from the beginning. So like the guy, you're there, and you fight the first fight and the second fight. And if they go right to the finals, I do pretty well. But when they have you stop and go to have dinner...
Oh, God.
Man, you want to talk about hard to get up for that thing? I mean, because my energy is completely blown, right? I'm completely exhausted. I have no idea, and so you go out and, of course, you eat, which doesn't do you any good at all. And so you're eating and you go, yeah, and then you get back and you can't warm up. You can't get ready, So, I mean, you do okay, but you just don't have that same explosive spark.
You fight many battles, but your new adversary was the chimichanga. We ate over dinner.
How did you know I had chimichangas? Anyway, so that's...
It sounds funnier to say.
Okay, but anyway, my good friend won the black belt cadet trophy, so it was kind of neat. But doing all right in tournaments in those days seemed to be okay. I mean, nowadays, people, winning a tournament of basically tag isn't considered as important. But in those days, we didn't think of it as a game of tag. We thought of it as like this was as big a deal as anything. And, and of course, Bruce Lee had just passed away, so we didn't realize, no, this was 673, yeah. He just passed away, so we had different ideas about what was going on.
A voice from beyond the room asks if you have heard something on the radio that speculations that MMA might be bad for the martial arts community, or said way better by him, but that's the translation.
Well, I mean, that's the weird thing about, the martial arts community. We got martial arts community that could be everywhere from some kid who got an 11-year-old kid who has a black belt after training for almost 18 months. You have moms and dads who train in various really commercial karate schools and don't really actually break a sweat when they're training. And then you have these MMA guys who actually represent, they may not be the nicest people and they may have the ugliest tattoos known to mankind, but they train. And they train really hard, and they owe nobody an apology. I mean, it sort of sucks because some of them are a bit meat-headed, but really, I mean, these guys work their asses off. I mean, it's sure there's some times when you get some guy, some over-the-hill fighter who comes back and doesn't do so great and then complains that, the referee wasn't seeing it my way. But really, these guys work really, really hard. And it's put it this way, if MMA gives martial arts a black eye, then you'd have to ask yourself, what is the situation with martial arts? Why would anybody even say that? I mean, there are some guys out there that are not the best human beings, but I think you'd probably find a difficult time really getting like people who are really great fighters and really great human beings simultaneously. It's kind of one of those things where the guys that we want to win our battles for us aren't always the guys we want to marry our daughters. But we don't have any daughters left to get married if we don't have those guys fighting our battles for us. So it's kind of absurd, but it's true.
It's like having like rigs on your police force, you know?
Yeah.
He breaks the rules, but he gets the job done.
Yeah, but and we all say that, but it's really true. There's a lot of guys out there in modern society, like somebody gets beaten up, or somebody maybe, I don't know, worst thing happens, like somebody gets killed. But we live in a very peaceful society compared to like 200 years ago. We had an awful lot more violence in our society than we have now. So we complain a lot about stuff that we should get better, but it's not necessarily that. But when it comes down to war, and we seem to, we like to think we don't. I mean, I don't think we've been without a war in the past 500 years for more than 6 months. I mean, there was the First World War, then there was some stuff in Haiti, and then there was some stuff in Nicaragua, and then, there's some stuff in South America. Oh, yeah, then there's the Second World War, Vietnam, and then there was some other stuff, and then, there's more Vietnam stuff. Korea, and then there's, the stuff in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's the next story. It's not, you don't feel good about it, but it's pretty much, we are the descendants of hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years. And we are here because we've survived. And we survived not by being the nice guy. We all like to say, but unfortunately, there are reasons why certain groups of people succeed. And most of I'm reading this book now called Guns, Germs, and Steel. And it's really amazing because I don't know if it's an absolutely accurate book. It's pretty good. But it tells you all about how people succeed and fail. The farmer community of the world, because they're the ones who took over for most of the hunter-gatherers, they would go some places. And now, if you had superior technology, you would take over. But if the places you were trying to invade had better germs, then you'd all die anyway. So guns, germs, and steel. So the technology, for example, Eurasia, it was really strong because they had most of the crops that were domesticated, most of the animals that were domesticated. So, for example, they invented the wheel in Mexico, except it was only ever used on a toy because they didn't have any animals to pull a cart to make human work more valuable. Or, for example, if you had a big cow or like an ox pulling your cart, then you could use it as a technological advancement. But if you had no cows and you only had other people to pull a cart, well, they could do just as well without the cart. So that's the thing. That's how we go there. Cro-Magnon man took over from Neanderthal man. Why? Because in those days, in the days of non-political correctness, whoever was more successful took over. And so that's what we are. That's what we do. It's not a very nice reality, but that's a reality.
So what you're saying is we all need superpowers to balance it out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, superpowers would work.
Go Magneto. All right. Any other questions from anyone here? Because you're all amazing people and you all came to the seminar today. Let's break the ice. You're our first live audience. What about you? You have any questions?
I had a great time today.
How long have you been in the Navy SEALs?
1 district.
Okay.
All right.
But I highly respected the Army. It was a part of my life when I was.
Hey, say it in the microphone. You're in. No, you come here. You say it in the microphone.
Army was part of my life when I was growing up. For 3.5 years, I was in my country for officers.
Why?
And it was one of the biggest.
Your other country.
My other country.
Yeah.
Well, both are my countries.
Say it in there.
Having a Greek background, I did 3.5 years in my country, and I was really happy to have that because it's one of the biggest universities in the face of the earth. And I respect we talk about martial arts, like from the dawn of time, every country has, they try to pride themselves for the military and everything. When I got into martial arts, when I came back in Canada in 71, I was really fortunate to train under different teachers in Montreal, and that's how I met my friend. That guy, that big guy right there.
The audience came here.
Grandmaster Philip Gelinas.
Right.
And man, did I ever get some hook kicks in the head. I really wanted to go down and just do little sweeps so I could avoid his spinning kicks. And after so many years, what brought us back together, martial arts. And I'm fortunate to have a great friend and a great teacher that guides me. Because without him, I wouldn't be where I am. The same thing for other people in here. The more we share our experiences and make things better, the better we're gonna be by gathering whatever we have and sharing it among ourselves and to the kids that we go forward with. Some of us that we have schools, and some of us that are fortunate to travel and pick up information from the people who have gathered everything, and they're like lights in the middle of the sea. It was nice to be here today.
All right,
That's
man.
Embrun, by the way.
And what was this gentleman's name? You got to tell the audience here.
That's Sigong John Lianos.
All right. That was some nice words.
Have a nice apple piso day.
Apple piece all the way.
Getting back to what you said a while ago about what you, the first things you experience. Like the first thing you experience is kind of like it stays with you because it's the first one. I was talking to an old friend today, and I was in a band when I was in high school, pretty much before I became a video editor. In a way, it's kind of cool that you decided at such a young age that you wanted to pursue martial arts, or martial arts was your thing. And I'm sure it took a little while to become only a martial artist. And like, you had the balls for that. But we discussed that in our episode, how to build a gym. It's a good episode. It won many awards. I'm just trying to plug the show because like Dad and I have been. This is our 12th episode, so we have to understand that like a comic book, if you opened up the 17th issue, you can't be arrogant enough to think that someone's read number 1 to 17, but at the same time not go into too heavily a detail for the people who gave you the benefit of listening to all your episodes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the first time, I was in a band, and all these people like really liked the band stuff, and they were like 13 years old, and we were probably the first show they saw. When you don't know any better, whatever you see first is amazing, right? So as they got older and stuff, that is why there's no footage of my band. No record of it, no music online, no videos. I don't want to disprove anybody's happy memory with how mediocre we were.
Yeah, but I remember Robin falling through the stage.
When we played at my high school, the stage was a bunch of boxes on wheels, and he managed to fall through the boxes.
It was pretty funny, especially
it's
on
pretty
video,
awesome.
because you could, that could be done.
It could be done. You had something before, wasn't it?
I was just going to ask if you think that...
Do you want to say it on the microphone? Yay, there you go. Say hi to your dad. It's Father's Day.
whether you think that the MMA has kind of led to a sort of jack of all trades but master of none type of martial artist?
Well-
or do we really have people who now are just masters in several disciplines at the same time?
What was your name?
Barton Fink.
There you go. You're a star.
Anyway, no, the funny thing is that, this other martial art that I practice, Kajukenbo, whenever I read old histories about it, of course, we all like to rewrite things. We got a bunch, they were a bunch of guys who were 19, 20 years old, and people said, okay, in 1947, 5 masters of the martial arts got together to create Kajukenbo. Reality is actually quite different from that. These were young guys. They were 20 years old. They weren't masters. Masters are hidebound. They've got something to protect. I mean, for example, if you're Mr. Big in anything, you're going to be the guy who's going to defend that thing. For example, if you're the best whatever, and somebody goes around and says, hey, you could probably make that better by, adding sugar. And it's like, no, we can't do that. Everything has to be the same as I got because my teacher was in 15 generations, my family. And, it's like that's what happens to most things when you never change them. And so what happens a lot of times is that people have an expectation, but when you're young, you don't have expectations, you have growth. And so these guys got together and I wasn't there, I have no idea, I'm only repeating stories, but these guys supposedly got together and they would train together all the time. And they would just beat the living daylights out of each other to see what worked. And they came from different disciplines. There was a Kempo guy. Actually, there was a bunch of Kempo guys. There were some Jiu-jitsu guys. There was some Japanese karate guys, and they had some Kung Fu guys, and a lot of them were Filipinos. So they were actually Cali guys, but they weren't allowed in those days. Filipino guys weren't allowed talking about their martial art. It was pretty secretive, and so they had all these. They got together, and they would in Hawaii. There was the largest concentration of American servicemen west of the west coast of the U.S. I mean, Hawaii was a big place, which is why the Japanese found it such a strong idea to go and try to bomb it into non-existence. So they tried, and it didn't work out for them. So what happened is that after the war, everybody came back, and they said, we want to get this smart. These guys were all training really hard, and they become very good. And they did this stuff, but it's kind of like if you're like, I'll ask Calvin, if you've been doing boxing for 40 years, what's your motivation to get together with somebody else to actually do something better? You're a really great boxer, but I can't see you doing Taekwondo today because, and not because it doesn't interest you, but because, I can't see me doing Taekwondo today because, my body is just at that point where it's going, yeah, it's holding together because I got good baling wire and I got some really good string attached to me. But really, when you want to do something new and blend new things, you have to be young enough to do it. And for me, it's, when it comes to stuff like that, when it comes to putting stuff together, you have to have a mind to be able to do that. It's sort of like if you're young and have a wife and maybe a very young child, and somebody says, hey, we're going to put you off in this desert island and you'll be able to grow your life this way. It's actually not a bad idea. It's not a great idea, but it's nothing. But if you're late 50s, early 60s, it's like, what? Start over? Really? Over? Like, from scratch?
You are depressing the hell out of everybody here.
Well, no, I'm being a realist. That's why, when you're doing things, new things start from new people, from young people. They're not, very rarely do you see somebody coming out with some really, really bright ideas. Like, for example, Albert Einstein.
Like Bob Dylan coming out today. It's like, I just discovered something called hip hop.
Yeah, okay. But even then, look at musicians. When do they write their best stuff? Not when they're 80 years old. I'm sure there's some stuff that's been coming out when old, but most of the time, people do their best stuff when they're young and most energetic. And say martial arts is no different. Very rarely do you see a Olympic champion of 50 years old, except in maybe, do they have lawn bowling in the Olympics? I don't know. But very rarely do older people actually become champions because it's the guy with, it's that combination of skill and ability and youth coming together. Because, we old guys like to say, age and treachery beats youth and exuberance all the time. Not so often. Mostly age, treachery, and a gun beats youth and exuberance. But other than that, really, you have to say to yourself, hey, this is a real situation. Martial arts, doesn't make, the guys who do MMA, they aren't really masters of anything other than themselves. But what they are is they are out there trying. There's, I would say MMA is probably one of the most difficult physical arts to do because you have to do some kind of striking and some kind of grappling and some kind of submission. Because even if you never do any of the submission stuff and you're just a striker, you have to be able to stop.
You have to have it on file.
Yeah, you have to have it on file because you have to know how to stop the guy who does want to do that to you. And so, there are a bunch of guys out there who used to be really, or they still are, but they're really good at one thing. But the reason they're really good at one thing is because they can stop the other guy from doing what they want to do. The first few UFCs, if you ever go look back, it's like, the non-Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy was surprised because either the guy punched him in the head, which was a surprise, or they, like the guy Keith Hackney beat up that big sumo wrestler guy, or there are different people who beat each other up. But really, the reason that Royce Gracie was so successful at the beginning was because he fought anybody because he had already fought. The Gracies had already been doing that stuff for a long, long time. They knew what it was all about. Whereas all these other guys, it was a big surprise. Like, you'd see the boxer, he'd be, I remember there was one Thai boxer, one of the first ones. Some guy came up to him and grabbed him. And he was like kind of looking at him. He was like, hey, what's going on? Because, of course, if you're a boxer or a Thai boxer and somebody grabs you in a combative situation, there's this guy called a referee. And then he does, hey guys, break. And separates you.
What if you can't break?
Well, no, that's just it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. And that's the big. So like, a lot of these guys, it's not like they were not good enough to fight them. It's just that nobody except the Gracies had the frame of reference necessary to be able to interface all of those disciplines at the same time.
Okay.
Now, of course, it's not the same at all. You could be a great wrestler or a great striker or a great anything. As long as you had a certain amount of the other components, that's all you needed.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up really soon. Because I edit these shows and yeah. Does anyone else have anything else they want to ask or add or something like that? And something on the pod and nothing like I'm too old for this stuff.
Oh, I'm not too old for this. I'm just accepting the fact that I'm old.
So anything? You're old.
I know.
Jared, you're full of wisdom. Was there anything else that you thought was topical or interesting? Do you want to say it in the microphone, man? You got such a nice voice. Yeah, come on.
I'm not a martial arts fighter or anything like that, but Hollywood teaches us that learning martial arts is for self-defense, and I was just curious where competition falls with that philosophy.
Checks in the mail, a lot of things like that. because martial arts were created by people who wanted to have a tactical advantage over somebody else. I mean, individual martial arts were created as an outgrowth of combat sciences practiced by people who, they got together. I mean, it was not the hunter-gatherers because they worked in smaller tribes, in tribal units. It's when people got together and they needed larger groups to actually kind of, if I was a large farming community and I wanted to have better land, I had to go and steal it. It wasn't they didn't come and say, hey, you want to buy my land? So that wasn't the thing. So you would develop like strategies to come in and win other stuff. So if you look in the earliest days, like in what they call the Fertile Crescent, that's where most of that stuff started. So you had people who could, they learned how to read and they learned how to write. Well, I actually learned how to write before they could read. Anyway, the reading and writing came up about, I guess, 3,500 years ago, or maybe 5,000 years ago. I think 3,500 BC. Yeah, so about 5,000 years ago. Anyway, so these guys came up, and what they did is they started developing techniques against other people. Like what techniques work? Well, if you hit them in the back of the head with a rock, that really works well. Okay. But if they're all standing on the other side and they got their own rocks, maybe it doesn't work so well. Oh, okay. So then they started doing the sticks and stones, and different technologies evolved. I mean, the bow and arrow came
And
about.
eventually they used names.
They were calling each other names?
No, you said they used sticks and stones, so eventually they used names. That's funny.
Okay. I'm laughing. In the inside, I'm laughing. Anyway.
I assure you that's funny.
I spent 70 grand on that bit. Anyway, but that's the reality of what we are. I mean, the martial arts, Hollywood, as you say, told us that it's there. But Hollywood also tells us a lot of things. And, different things were created in our society for different reasons. But, martial arts fighting, we learn how to fight in a tactical way because we want to control other people. Nowadays, everybody is on every square inch of the earth. There is no place that is fertile or desirous that isn't run or controlled by some person other than the person. So let's say the United States is controlled by all these Americans. Canada is controlled by all these Canadians. Russia is controlled by all these Russians. So if somebody said, I want, I don't know, how about Ukraine? That's an interesting idea. Well, how could we get Ukraine? Well, we can go in there and take it. They don't have any way of stopping us. And guess what? They did. So that's the thing. That's what we are. That's what we do. We all go, that's horrible. I said, yeah, but there's also Nicaragua. There are some people who went in there in 1920 to take it over because, well, gosh darn heck, those pesky inhabitants didn't want to have the United Fruit Company, take all of their profits. So they sent in the American Marines, and hey, guess what? The people who used to run it still ran it afterwards. That it's happened in every country that had, it's a little weaker than a bigger, stronger country. That's why they have empires. That's why, certain people want to control other people. And it's not just because they're megalomaniacs, it's because that's how you get more money. You get people to pay you stuff, call it taxation, call it tribute, call it what you will. But that's how you get things to happen. Right? That's how you get people to win. And so there are people who, how do you learn to fight? You learn to fight by fighting other guys. You learn, but then the people who are good draw to them other people that are good. And so they make armies. And then when you have an army, then you figure out tactically how you can beat somebody else. And then so on and so on. And
I'm really glad people fight with their words more. Like, I've had wars on Facebook with perfect strangers over who played Batman better. Stuff like that. But all right, so we're gonna. If anyone has anything else, say so now. Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been trying to warm you guys up. You guys have been staying there.
My name is Calvin Lawrence, and my background is boxing, and that's it. And I just want to say that, my nickname was Rembrandt because I was always on the canvas. and Dr. Kevorkian worked my corner, so I had to step up my game. And anyway, I just want to say that I'm very grateful.
He's here all week.
In this environment and be able to take part in this and learn these new things at my stage of life. So I'm really grateful. I'd like to put that on the record.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no. Thank you, Calvin. Jeez.
Oh, what a nice thing to say. Well, we had a lovely day here. You guys are our first live audience ever. Like the only live audience is what Mom heard through the kitchen door, and Mom doesn't hear much, so that audience hasn't existed.
She's going to be very upset to hear that.
Oh, I'm just kidding. It's Father's Day. Come Mother's Day, I'll start dissing you. It's my gift to you, Dad. This is your iPad.
This is my gift.
Yeah, this is your iPad. All right, so just to say, Dad, because it's Father's Day, I'm gonna address a couple of things just right before we go. Nice little positive note. But before I say this positive note, thank you very much for Anwen for having Dad here and having a seminar. I had a lovely day reading comic books in the corner when all you guys sweated and hurt each other.
And Michel D, because
Yeah.
without he, there would be no Michel D.
Yeah. Seriously, this gym's awesome. What's the address here, Dad?
Preston.
Preston. It's in Little Italy. Do not be wary of the bikers outside. They're bicyclers, and not of the Sons of Anarchy
This
fashion.
is at 401 Preston.
All right, 401 Preston. All right, Dad. So the last note of the day, Dad. It has been cool coming here with you today. We had a nice talk in the car up. It would have been the best podcast ever, but we didn't think about recording it. Talk for 2 straight hours. But to all those out there listening and to all you in this room, do something with your fathers, family members, just something. Anybody could do this. And finding this is, I'm 30 years old. I've talked to my dad more in the last 2 months than I think in the entire 90s combined. And there is always something that you could find something in common. I may not be skilled with no weapons or know how to jump kick a tree, but I have a good time talking with my old man.
All right.
And I enjoy sharing with everyone who listens your stories because I think you're awesome.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Car.
And someday maybe I'll do something. Someday maybe I'll buy you an iPod or the equivalent of something of it and reduce you to tears like I try to do every day, but in a good way.
Okay.
All right. Thanks to everyone for watching listening to Tuhon Son. The people in here who watch Tuhon Son. It's our first live episode ever. And we couldn't have thought of doing it anywhere except here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.